I first started studying Bulgarian back in 2016, and even though my life and my approach to language learning has changed a lot since then, and I have taken so many breaks and come back to the language so many times, one thing that has never changed is the number of people asking me to make a video on the resources that I use to learn the language. So that's what we're going to do today. But first, hello, my name is Abigail, and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. I do want to point out that I am definitely at a beginner, low intermediate-ish level in Bulgarian right now. So unlike some of my other resource videos, this is going to be very much so concentrated just on beginner resources. And maybe someday when I'm at a more intermediate or even advanced level in Bulgarian, I will come back to this and make an updated video with some of my favorite advanced and intermediate resources. But for now, I'm honestly really glad that I'm making a video focused on beginner resources in Bulgarian because I feel like those have been the most difficult for me to find. Once you're at an intermediate or advanced level, it's a lot easier to just go and find things that are made for native speakers of a language and use that to continue improving your skills. But as a beginner, you not only need easier media to understand, but you also probably just need a little bit of help and guidance. And that help is not always easy to find when it comes to Bulgarian. And in my time learning Bulgarian, I have definitely used so many resources and have found so many of them to just not be very good. So I want this to be a way to save you some time. If you're looking to learn Bulgarian or you're a beginner right now and you're struggling to find resources that you feel like are helpful, I want this to be a video that saves you some time and points you in the right direction. And as your last disclaimer, there's going to be both free and paid resources in this video. I'm going to have links to everything down in the description. For textbooks, I'm just going to use Amazon because that's the easiest way to link everyone globally to the same place. But if you do have a local option, like a local bookstore or a website that you like to get your language books from that's not Amazon, I highly recommend taking that route instead. And lastly, this video is not sponsored, but some of the links in the description will be affiliate links because they'll give you some sort of discount if you use them. And now that all of that is out of the way, let's get started. The UN Refugee Agency actually offers free textbooks for A1, A2, and B1 Bulgarian. They're entirely in Bulgarian and they offer vocabulary, grammar, reading practice, writing exercises, general exercises to practice the vocabulary and grammar. The only thing you're really missing out on is a listening comprehension element. There is no audio, so you don't get any kind of exercises dedicated to that. But all of that aside, I think they're really well made, offer a lot of really helpful exercises, and they're free. So I think they're a really good way to get started and even start to work your way into the intermediate level with the language. If you're looking for Bulgarian resources, chances are you've come across the Intensive Bulgarian 1 and 2 textbooks. I'm partway through the second one right now, and I can honestly say that I recommend these if you go into them with the right approach. These are really dense textbooks. They're definitely made for a classroom setting as opposed to for self-studying Bulgarian, and they're also quite outdated at this point. But ever since I've taken the approach of skipping around and just using the parts that I need and the parts that are helpful to me, I have found these books to be really useful. I just want to point out that although these are really big and really long and seemingly very comprehensive textbooks, I personally have not found them to be a great singular or even main resource to use. The intensive Bulgarian books also don't have as many exercises and ways to practice the things that you're learning as I've seen in other Bulgarian textbooks. But as a supplemental resource, I feel like some of the grammar explanations are really helpful. I think you learn a wide variety of vocabulary, which is really good. And I also really like the idea of having cultural notes at the end of each chapter, but I will point out again, these books are over 20 years old, so some of these cultural notes are not always still relevant. I am planning to make a full in-depth review of both of these textbooks once I finish the second one. So if you're watching this video when it comes out and you're interested in that, definitely keep an eye open, subscribe if you're not already so that way you know when it comes out. And if you're watching this in the future, check the description because I'll link it there as soon as I make it. And lastly, on the textbook front, Assimil, Teach Yourself, and Colloquial all make Bulgarian textbooks, and I have used all three at least a little bit. Overall, I really trust all three of these companies when it comes to language textbooks, so I feel like they come up in all of my resource recommendation videos. But I will say that I have found their Bulgarian textbooks to be a little bit weaker than some of their other offerings. I feel like it's well known at this point that I love the Teach Yourself Complete German textbook, but I don't necessarily have the same love for the Teach Yourself Complete Bulgarian textbook. I think it's still a great resource for beginners. I still really recommend it. But if you are someone like me who has used several of the other books from these companies and maybe has expectations of what a book from them is like, just go into it knowing that you may not be as thrilled with the Bulgarian book as you may have been for a German textbook or a Spanish textbook, etc. And if you've never used a textbook from one of these publishers before and you don't really care how it stacks up against other books that they've published previously, I will say that I highly recommend these because they are designed for people self-studying the language. They're super comprehensive, super approachable, are full of vocabulary from really useful topics to get you using the language right off the bat. And one of the most important things for me when I'm looking for a textbook are full of a lot of really helpful exercises, so that way you can practice using the language in a lot of different ways: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So if you're used to these companies, keep what I said in mind, but if you haven't before, don't let me scare you off. Moving out of textbooks, something that is really basic but also really important if you're learning a new language is having a dictionary. And surprising to me, but maybe not surprising to some of you, I've actually had quite a bit of trouble finding a Bulgarian dictionary online that I really like. But the dictionary that I have found really useful and that I use right now is the PONS Bulgarian online dictionary. You can use it to go from Bulgarian to English and English to Bulgarian, and I found that in general it seems to be the resource that has the most words available. I've definitely run into issues with other dictionary sites of them just not having certain things that I need to look up, which has been very frustrating because at a beginner, low intermediate level, I don't feel like I should already be having trouble finding words. If you're looking for something else a little bit structured that isn't necessarily a textbook, I really recommend the Bulgarian Pod 101 course. I actually haven't used Innovative Languages' other Pod 101 courses, so I can't actually compare whether the Bulgarian one is at the same level as other courses or not. I can just say that as I've gone on and gotten to higher levels, I've found it a little bit less helpful, but I definitely think that the beginner levels are really solid and really give you the information that you need. I, for whatever reason, really put off paying for a subscription for Bulgarian Pod 101 for a long time, but once I did, I honestly ended up preferring it to the textbooks that I was using. I think that the audio is really great and makes it really easy to hear how things are pronounced and where stress goes in Bulgarian. I feel like grammar was explained in a way that was a lot easier to understand and just generally a lot more approachably than in the intensive Bulgarian textbooks. And just in general, I feel like the information was really relevant. It was stuff that was very helpful to get me started speaking Bulgarian. The course also has a lot of different types of activities. There's the general course where you can listen to conversations and learn based off of that. There's grammar information, there's listening comprehension videos, and reading comprehension practice, though I will say I haven't been as huge of a fan of the reading comprehension units, but I will give you a different resource you can use for that in a minute. I think these would be a great supplement to another resource, and I also feel like this would make a better main resource over the intensive Bulgarian books, and you could use those more as a supplement. Maybe get your reading practice through that, and then use Bulgarian Pod 101 for kind of your audio and grammar, etc. Plus, while it is a paid resource, the innovative language courses go on sale like all of the time, so if you are on a budget, you're looking for a cheaper resource, this also might be a good option for you. Another audio-based course and another genuine favorite on this list is Glossika. I will say that I started the Bulgarian course from scratch, even though I had a higher level at the time when I went into it, so I'm still only at like A1 high in the course, or maybe A2 low. Either way, I definitely can't say how good the course remains as it goes on, but since this is a beginner's resource video, I do feel comfortable recommending it because I have used the beginner material and I think it's really solid. I really love Glossika. I feel like it's easy to use. I feel like it has genuinely been the single most helpful resource when it comes to improving my pronunciation and listening comprehension in Bulgarian. So if you like audio courses like Pimsleur, or you're just looking to improve your listening and speaking in Bulgarian, I highly recommend Glossika. I have used Glossika for other languages as well, and at least the stuff that I've used so far, I feel like Bulgarian is at exactly the same level as their other courses too, which makes me very happy. If you haven't used Glossika, the best way to describe it is sort of like a flashcard system, but with audio instead. So how I typically use it is I'll read the sentence in English, and then I will say what I think it's going to be in Bulgarian. Then I listen to the actual Bulgarian, I copy that, I hear it again in Bulgarian, I copy it again, and it just gives me a way to practice my pronunciation, like I said, get used to listening to things in Bulgarian. It's helped a lot for how sounds kind of combine and how words are said together in a sentence, and it also just helps me learn new words and grammar points in context. The one downside to Glossika that I've found is that it can get a bit tedious, especially if you're not one for audio courses or flashcards, but if you do like audio courses like me, or if you want to use it more as a supplement as opposed to a main resource, I feel like it can be very, very helpful to your Bulgarian. Speaking of flashcards, let's talk about Memrise, specifically the community-made courses. I personally will never get over Memrise making the community-made courses only available on desktop, but that's just me personally, and this is not the video for that rant. While Memrise has not made an official Bulgarian course like they have for other languages, several community members have uploaded decks that are really useful. I really just suggest scrolling through all of the courses available and picking the ones that are useful to you and finding the words that you want to learn. But I do recommend taking a look. I've used several of them and they've been very, very helpful to my Bulgarian learning. One of my biggest struggles with Bulgarian has been finding places for me to practice my listening and reading while I'm still at a beginner level. In general, I tend to opt for children's material or material with simple content over graded readers or things made for language learners. But even so, I've definitely found it very difficult to find material to read and to watch that is comprehensible to me as a beginner in Bulgarian. However, one of my favorite resources and one of the things that I am excited to include in this video is a website called Az-deteto. It's a news site, but all of the content is written for children, so it ends up being this perfect mix of interesting and relevant to me as an adult, while also being a lot shorter and a lot easier for me to understand than if I was reading news just on a Bulgarian news site. There are definitely still words that I run into that I do not know, and a lot of words where I wouldn't expect myself to know them, but I always read it with the PONS dictionary handy, and you can also kind of combat that by reading about topics that are a little more familiar to you. It reminds me a lot of Time for Kids if you're familiar with that, but regardless, I really recommend it as a place to get started with your reading practice, even if you are at a beginner level. When it comes to comprehensive listening practice, you can find a few shows and movies on Netflix, at least in the States, in Bulgarian, and you can also find some Bulgarian versions of Disney movies online, but overall, I have found that the most plentiful resource is definitely just YouTube. For starters, there are a lot of full episodes of Bulgarian dubbed kids shows on YouTube. I know I have watched Peppa Pig, Franklin, and Lazy Town, and there are also, of course, vloggers and YouTubers who make videos in Bulgarian. I'll say this is one of the recommendations that I wish I had something a little bit better to recommend. I very, very rarely, if ever, see any of the content that I find in Bulgarian also captioned. So if you are like me and you like to have captions on, especially when learning a new language, or you need captions to watch something, you are kind of gonna be out of luck. The lack of captioning also means things like Language Reactor just won't work. So it's really just you and the audio, and while the audio for most YouTubers, I've found at least, is totally fine, a lot of the dubbed shows are not the highest quality. The thing that I have found the most helpful with this is honestly just watching things that I am already familiar with. The 3 kids shows that I mentioned earlier are all things that I either grew up with or have watched in other languages, so I have a sense of what is going on and can follow the story even if I don't understand everything, or in some cases just can't even hear parts of it. I know there are a lot of people out there who really don't like using children's materials, hate watching it, find it super boring, but I definitely think that there's a benefit to it, because if you're already familiar with the story, you're already familiar with the material, you can fill in those blanks. Plus, kid shows are very visual. They make a big deal of showing everything. There's not a lot of nuance either. So it's a lot easier to keep up if you're not understanding or even hearing everything that's going on. That said, this is not a video where I tell you the resources that you must use. They're just recommendations. So if you are in the camp of hating kids' materials and you would rather not learn the language than watch a kid's video in Bulgarian, ignore this. Move on. Find something else. Maybe check out those YouTubers. Shouting out a YouTube channel that's a little bit different from vloggers, there aren't really very many people making videos teaching Bulgarian on YouTube, but there is Bulgarian Language Academy Bella, and the videos there are super, super useful. I personally love being able to just Google certain grammar concepts or certain things that I'm not grasping as well in my textbook and see how other people learned them, or see more explanations, more example sentences. And learning Bulgarian has definitely shown me that searching a certain concept and finding a bunch of Reddit posts and a bunch of other posts about how to do a certain thing online is definitely something that I've been taking for granted. But this channel has a lot of different videos on a lot of different subjects. I have definitely gone over certain grammar points that I have found confusing with these videos and found them very helpful. So if you also like having a quick place that you can kind of review certain things or even learn some new vocabulary, Highly recommend those videos. And lastly, and I have saved the very, very most important thing to my Bulgarian learning for last, italki. If you're someone who has watched my channel for a while or has learned other languages, chances are you're already familiar with italki. But if you're someone who stumbled upon this video because you're looking to learn Bulgarian specifically and you haven't studied other languages, italki is a website where you can find professional teachers and language tutors for so many different languages and take lessons with them online. When I first started learning Bulgarian, there were not a lot of Bulgarian tutors on italki. I think there were 3 when I first started, but in the years that have passed, a lot more tutors have joined the site. There are now a lot more Bulgarian tutors for you to choose from and find one who really fits what you're looking for. I use italki for pretty much every language I study, but because I have found it harder to just look up certain concepts and get some support just online, I have found having a tutor to really help me understand the language and help me practice the language just all that more important. If you're learning Bulgarian or are planning to start learning Bulgarian, I hope this video helped you find the resources that you need to make the progress you're looking for. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I will have everything that I mentioned linked down below, so if you are looking to try out any of these things, you can. I'll see you in the next video, and remember, practice makes progress.